The first time I heard her call sign on the net, I laughed. We all did. I want to be honest about that, because the men who tell this story like they always believed in her are lying, and she deserves better than lies. I ran a SEAL element in a city that does not appear on any tourist map, a place of flat rooftops and narrow alleys where the heat came off the walls, at night like something breathing. We were good, we knew we were good, which is its own kind of blindness. So when Command attached an Overwatch shooter to us for the push and her voice came across the radio, calm, unhurried, checking in as Lark, I keyed my mic before I could stop myself and said, "Lark, what do you do? Sing them to sleep." There was a pause. Then her voice came back, perfectly level. Lark, set, that was all. No bite, no defense. I remember thinking she had no fire in her, that Command had saddled us with someone soft, that I would have to babysit a rooftop shooter while my men did the real work down in the streets. My breacher, a big kid named Royce, said maybe she could hum us a lullaby if it got slow. The element laughed again. She never answered that one. She just went dark and climbed to wherever she was going, and I forgot about her, which is the most honest and the most shameful thing I can tell you. The push went wrong the way these things always go wrong, fast and all at once. We cleared 3 blocks clean, and on the 4th the city woke up. They had let us come in. The first burst dropped one of my men in a doorway, and the second sealed the alley behind us, and inside of 90 seconds, my 8-man element was pinned in a stone channel barely wide enough for 2 men abreast, fire coming from windows above us, and a heavy gun working the far end of the street. We could not go forward. We could not go back. I had a man bleeding out against a wall, and 3 positions I could not even see, much less reach, and the wall I was pressed against was coming apart over my head in little white bursts of rock dust. I got on the net, and I called it the way you call the worst day of your life, flat, because if you let the fear into your voice, the whole element hears it. Pinned, multiple positions, elevated. We can't move. And Command came back with the words you never want to hear. Nearest support is 20 minutes. 20 minutes. We did not have 20 minutes. We had 2, maybe 3, and then, very quietly, a different voice came over the net. Element lead, Lark, I have your alley. Hold what you've got and let me work. Do not move your men into the street. I almost laughed. Even then, even there. The rooftop shooter I had mocked an hour before, telling me to hold. I had no choice. I pressed my men flat, and I told them to make themselves small, and I waited, and what happened in the next 4 minutes I have spent the rest of my career failing to describe to people who weren't there. The heavy gun at the end of the street was the thing that was going to kill us. It had the whole channel ranged, and every few seconds it walked a burst down the stone toward my wounded man. I heard one shot, just one, from somewhere high and behind us, a flat crack that was almost lost in the noise. The heavy gun stopped. It simply stopped, mid-burst, and did not start again. Then the window on the 3rd floor that had pinned my left side, gone, one shot, the muzzle that had been there went dark. Then the rooftop position across from it. She was not spraying the city. She was reading it. From wherever she lay she could see what I could not, and she was taking the threats off my men one at a time, in clean spaced shots, each one ending a gun that had been trying to end us. I started to be able to track her by the silences. Every few seconds another enemy position that had been hammering us would simply cease, and into that growing quiet I could hear my own men breathing again. When a knot of them broke from a doorway to rush my pinned element, thinking we were finished, she met them in the open street. I watched 4 men go down in the space of a held breath, dropped clean before they had crossed half the distance, and the 5th turned and ran and did not make it to the corner. 9. My breacher counted them later, going position to position, his voice strange. 9 gunners in 4 minutes, and not one round of hers came anywhere near my men, and she did it from a rooftop she had picked while we were laughing at her name. I have thought 1,000 times about what that took. Every one of those shots was a problem solved under a clock that was counting down my men's lives. Wind off the hot rooftops, the angle through a window she had a half-second to read, the heavy gunner half hidden behind his own sandbags. A lucky shooter sprays and prays and hits 1 in 20. She was not lucky. She was the most deliberate human being I have ever heard work. And the proof of it was that nothing she did touched us, when a single round low or wide would have come down into the alley where my element lay, packed shoulder to shoulder. She knew exactly where every one of us was, and she put 9 rounds into the only 9 places in that city that mattered, and she did it in less time than it takes to boil a kettle. The street went silent, the kind of silence that has a weight to it. I got my element up and we carried our wounded out of that alley under her gun, and the whole way she talked us through it. Left side clear. Hold at the corner, one runner 2 blocks north, he's down. Calm as a woman reading a grocery list, until we were clear of the kill zone and the relief bird was inbound. My wounded man lived. I want that on the record because it is the only number that ever mattered to me more than 9. He had been bleeding against that wall when she started working, and because she shut down the heavy gun in the first 10 seconds, my breacher could reach him and pack the wound, and we carried him out breathing. The surgeons told me later that another 2 minutes would have finished him. 2 minutes, that was the exact margin she bought us, shot by shot, while I lay in the dirt and did nothing but hold a corner and pray. I found her afterward at the casualty collection point, and I want to tell you what that was like, because the reckoning is the part that matters. She was smaller than I expected, sitting against a wall with her rifle across her knees, her face grey with exhaustion and grit, and she did not look up at me like a woman waiting for an apology. She looked up like she had a job and the job was done. I had a speech ready and it died in my throat. What came out was, "Your call sign, Lark." She nodded. I asked her where it came from, because I needed to know, because I had made it a joke. And she told me, without any anger, that a lark is the bird that sings before the sun is even up, that sings in the dark, before anyone can see the light coming. Then she said, "You were in the dark down there. I just sang first." I learned the rest the way you always do, later, in pieces. That before she ever came to us, she had a record, a string of confirmed engagements and impossible distances that command kept quiet, because that is how the best ones are kept. There were briefings, men told me, where her name was read out, and senior officers who had never met her went quiet because they knew what the numbers next to it meant. She had held a mountain pass alone for 2 days once, the story went, covering a withdrawal that should have been a massacre, and she had walked off that ridge and asked for coffee and said nothing else about it to anyone. That was who command had handed me. That was the shooter I had offered a lullaby. That she had asked for Overwatch attachments specifically to units like mine, hard units, units full of men exactly like me, because she had decided a long time ago that the work was more important than the welcome. She had heard me mock her on the net, and she had climbed to her position anyway and saved every life I had down in that alley, including mine, and she had never once thrown it back at me. My breacher Royce, who had offered her a lullaby, found her before we shipped out and could not get a word out at all. He just came to attention in front of her and held a salute until his arms shook, and one by one the whole element did the same, hard men standing in a dusty courtyard saluting the rooftop shooter they had laughed at, and she stood and returned it without a word, because she did not need to say anything. She had already said it 9 times in 4 minutes. I have run a lot of operations since that night. I have trained a lot of young men who think the way I used to think, that loud is the same as good, that they can size a person up by their name or their size or the softness in their voice, and every single time I tell them about Lark. I tell them that the best soldier I ever fought beside checked in quiet, took my joke without a flinch, and then held a city street alone with 9 clean shots while I cowered against a wall. I tell them the bird sings before you can see the sun, and I tell them that the day they learn to listen for it, really listen, before they laugh, is the day they might finally be worth standing next to her.